Hello, everybody. This is the start of the energy unit, and this is going to be looking at changing energy usage. So, when we think about what energy we have used in the last, throughout human history, what we see is, it started off with humans using their own muscles and the muscles of animals to do work to as is this the main energy source. Along with that, then they're going to be using wood and dung to cook their food. So that is the biomass here. So what we see is, starting about 1850, before like the heavy uses of coal, it would have been all biomass of like basically burning wood. But then, sometime in the 1800s, coal starts to being used, and what we see is that really by 1900, it's pretty much all coal being used. And so what we see is more fossil fuels get used, and then renewable energy starts to come around, somewhere between, the mid 1900s. And so when we think about, thinking about the early forms of energy of burning wood and using muscle as energy, let's spend some more thinking about the burning biomass. And burning biomass is oftentimes thought of as an environmentally friendly way to use energy because it is renewable, and that's somewhat true, right? But forests can regrow, and you can make firewood, or the forests make the firewood by themselves, right? But the thing is, the people that are using biomass and cooking on open fires are really exposing themselves to particulates of this the smoke that is from this cooking fire. And if you're leaning over it and you can see there's like babies and children around the fire, they're exposed to these things, and it's really can cause cancer, a lot of respiratory problems, and causes a lot of deaths per year. Also, then we see a lot of deforestation with this. Is that as people are searching for fuel wood, they're cutting down whole forests for that. So it's in some ways definitely not as environmentally friendly as some people will say, other than just that renewable aspect of it. What we see then is as humans moved into coal, and what we saw that it was really a time of no environmental regulation, where the you can think of like Victorian era London was a terrible place where there was coal dust going everywhere, and just mass pollution in cities, and due to just everybody burning a bunch of coal in their homes. What we're actually seeing right now then is kind of like a second industrial revolution in the emerging countries. So it's kind of like China, India, and Brazil, and Southeast Asia now are really breaking into a lot of their people are becoming more wealthy, and we're seeing that they're, rather than having fireplaces, they're burning coal and using this coal, and we're seeing again this kind of second wave of massive pollution that we saw back. This is a picture of Victorian era London, and this is current day China. How we saw then energy change away from coal, we see a lot more oil being used, and this is generally due to mobility. So we can think 1950s, really everybody starts having cars, at least in the US. And everybody starts moving away from cities. Because you have your own car, you're able to move around much more, to the point that we see right now the average commute in the United States is 25 minutes. And that's average, right? There's plenty of people that do much, much more than that. And so what we see is also people are moving around in other ways too, which is looking at air travel, right? So basically, well, planes were pretty rudimentary here, but by the 60s we have jet planes that are pretty much what we have today. Not as efficient, but um, recognizable as the planes that we see now. So we see a huge increase in air travel. People are moving around the planet much, much more. And this is the same with amount of miles people are driving and the number of cars. So what we see is, right around 1950, this huge spike in the amount of energy that is. This is an exajoule. It's a really huge number of amount of energy that's being used, and this is where it's kind of coming from. We see biofuels have kind of stayed constant, but a huge expansion in coal, a huge expansion in oil, natural gas, and nuclear in the last 70 years or so. What we see then is we're somewhere here, right in and where you know there's the European Union, and then China, and here's the rest of the world. So, we're somewhere in here, but we can see that as China is growing, they're going to be really a big player in the energy demand. So we're kind of looking at seeing, what's going to happen. And hopefully what we can see is a huge increase in renewable energy, and a decrease in all of these, not so awesome energy sources that do a lot of the polluting that we see on the planet. But we'll have to, that will depend if we can decrease the amount of energy that we actually need, replace that a lot with these renewable energy sources that are much more clean, then that will do a lot to improve the environmental conditions on the planet. So that's all I have for this lecture. Hope you enjoyed it, and see y'all later.